Good afternoon. My name's Steve Peck. I'm the proud chair of the Douglas County Republican Party. Thank you for watching. Today, I've got the distinct honor and privilege of having a conversation with Douglas County Sheriff Darren Weekly. And if you don't know, Sheriff Weekly won his election last fall and took office this last January. So, Sheriff, how have the first 6 months been on the job?
I'm extremely blessed. It's going exceptionally well. The troops are motivated. Morale is high right now. We're definitely busy, but we've done a lot of restructuring, a lot of different things that we're doing. More transparency in the office, more transparency outside of the office, and things are going really well right now.
For people that haven't given much thought to it, how big is the office as far as FTEs, as far as the budget? And how does that compare with other counties?
We're one of the largest service counties in the entire state of Colorado. We have over 600 employees, about 400 commissioned, 200 civilian. We got about 200 volunteers on top of all of that. My annual budget right now is $96 million. Most of that is personnel costs, but that's also running the patrol division, running detentions, which is one of the primary functions of the sheriff, and of course investigations and everything else that goes with all of that, special teams and whatnot.
Wow, so 400 deputies then, is that right?
Yeah, between the jail, patrol, and investigations.
Okay. And I saw online on Twitter that you recently had a graduation. It looked like was it 15? I might have that number wrong. Some new deputies out in the street here.
Yep, they just all graduated from our Highlands Ranch Law Enforcement Training Academy. 15 deputy sheriffs. They're all going to detentions. Typically, when they're starting out in our business, certainly as the sheriff, they typically start out in detentions, get some experience in there, and they test to go out to patrol. But all 15 of these are starting out in the jail.
Okay, interesting. And so how long does that police academy take typically?
The academy is 4 months, and then they have a 3-month FTO program after that. 3 months in the jail, 4 months on patrol. So a lot of training.
Okay. So are you doing 3 classes a year then?
We are.
Okay. Interesting. How about what's recruitment look like? I know we had a conversation with Mayor Parker, and he has lots of complimentary things to say about the police force out there. Is it tough recruiting nowadays? Just given the political environment, being a police officer is not an easy thing. So I'm just curious, is that a struggle, or is that pretty easy to do here in Douglas County?
No, we're actually not having much of a problem at all. So Douglas County is a beautiful community. People appreciate public safety. They appreciate their law enforcement. Our compensation packages are very competitive with the rest of the Denver metro area. And, we're actually getting a lot of Denver cops and Aurora cops that are coming to work for us now because it's a great place to work, So we're really not having much of a problem. We can really just get the cream of the crop in terms of who we're hiring. And so it's not unusual for us to reject somebody for various reasons, including laterals from other agencies. So we can really pick and choose the ones that really fit our organization.
That's great. So as you think about you've got a 4-year term, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, a sheriff can run for 2 4-year terms. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So you're 6 months into the role. What are your top priorities as you see this first term?
Well, having worked here for 29 years and having come from worked in every area of the organization, what I want to do as the sheriff is to get back to basics, put more deputy sheriffs on the front line and frontline positions. Since I've been the sheriff, I've restructured the organization. I eliminated a chief position. I eliminated a captain position. And so I've cut the top, and I've restructured to put more uniformed deputies and marked cars out there on the street.
Okay, excellent.
Do that.
Well, and most people, when they think of Douglas County, they think of kind of like you said, it's a desirable place to live. It's a desirable place to work, especially if you're in law enforcement. Lots of retired former military, former police officers that have retired. I mean, we respect law and order, and we love our police. But that doesn't mean we're crime free here. I mean, what are the top things that are hitting your radar as from a criminal standpoint?
Well, we've seen an increase in violent crime, and that's a lot of that comes from whether you're talking domestic violence, you're talking bar fights, you're just talking assaults in general. Those are up. Some of our property crimes are actually down, and we're down in 2022. So burglaries, car break-ins, and things like that. Overall, in Douglas County, we actually saw a 2% crime reduction in 2022. And yeah, that's not much at all, but compared to the rest of the Denver metro area and what they're experiencing, I'll take the 2%. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we're doing well in Douglas County, but we've got everything the big cities do. You know, we have shootings, we have stabbings, we have just not as much of it. And one of the luxuries that we have is we're still very proactive. You know, large cities are primarily reactive. You call 911 or you call the police when you need a cop to show up. We still have the ability for our deputy sheriffs to be proactive out there on the street and try to avoid crimes ever being committed. And so if I can increase our patrol staffing with more marked cars on the street, bad guys see that marked car, maybe they'll go elsewhere.
Yeah. So the 2% reduction in crime, that was for 2022 or 2023?
2022. I won't have the 2023 stats until probably the middle of June for the first 6 months of this year, but that's overall
Yeah.
last year.
I mean, that's pretty remarkable. I got to believe, I don't know what the numbers are for Denver, but I do know that crime has surged since 2020. Carjackings in particular. I mean, even our own state senator, Kevin Van Winkle, had his car jacked, I believe, you could fact check me, I think from the state capitol building. I mean, how embarrassing is that?
Yeah, and it was a car theft, not specific carjack. Because carjack, it's like you get the gun in the
Stick
face.
up?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So, but yeah, car theft. We did have an increase in auto theft last year. I think it was a 7% overall increase in Douglas County in auto theft. Correct.
So
Sorry, 9%. I apologize.
9% increase in car theft. So
Correct.
what is there any like tips that you could give a viewer? Hey, because I've heard of several people will have their car stolen, or a friend will have a car stolen, and then all of a sudden it shows up in another city or another state. It's completely trashed. There's
Uh, Essentially, what I tell my own wife is don't leave anything in the car that you don't want stolen. Don't leave anything visible that somebody in the middle of the night. So here's what happens typically is these guys will come down and usually a stolen car into Douglas County with, 4 or 5 people crammed into a car. And they'll go out into a neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning when most people are sleeping. And then they'll fan out and they'll hit a particular neighborhood and either look for belongings in cars or cars that they want to steal. And, they'll just hit a particular neighborhood. It's important for people, if you do have to leave your car in your driveway, leave those floodlights on in your driveway. Again, don't leave anything in the car that you don't want stolen, and certainly nothing visible. And then call us if you think that there's something going on in your neighborhood that just does not look right. Don't go out and engage these people yourself. If it doesn't look right, just call. And you don't have to leave your name if you don't want to, you don't want to get involved and you don't want to get tied into anything. That's fine. Just call us and let us get out there. Let us investigate. But if you hear a car driving slowly down, you're, in front of your house at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's not the neighbor. It just doesn't look right. Call us and let us get out there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've had my own car rifled through here, and we live in an extremely safe neighborhood. But yeah, glove boxes open, trash all over the car, and yeah, sure enough, the other neighbors were hit. So I've experienced that myself.
Yeah, and
Um,
again, just hide the valuables because they'll take a landscaping rock to smash that window, and before you're up, they're out.
yeah, what they got was some very inexpensive, some cheap sunglasses, but and an old iPad, I think, or old iPod. What the heck is car surfing?
Well, it's something that teenagers have done over the years. Typically, they'll get on top of a car and they'll just either stand on it or they'll sit on it and they'll be on top of the car while the car is in motion. And it's extremely dangerous. We've had, I think, 6 incidents thus far. We've had one fatality, unfortunately, but parents need to see what's going on and see what their kids are up to, potentially have conversations. But we were all young and we were all teenagers once, and we thought we were invincible. And the fact is these kids are not, and some of these kids are making bad choices, and it's unfortunately it resulted at least once in a fatality.
So they're on the hood of the car, or the top of the car, or some other part of the car other than inside the car,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're cruising.
they are. They're outside of the sunroof. Some of them have been standing on the car. They might be hanging outside of the car window while the car is in motion. And it's just silliness. You can be hanging out a car window, and hit a bump, and the kid falls backwards and cracks their head open, and you potentially deadly results from that. So we
Yeah.
just want to parents aware of, hey, what's going on out there, and for those conversations to take place at the dinner table.
Yeah, no, I mean, that seems like one of those things that you wouldn't have to talk about, but I don't know, maybe it's a social media phenomenon or something. I saw the Twitter account, which, by the way, is doing very well. I heard you speak once, and you said that you've got either a new public affairs team or a different strategy than the one you were taking. So, congratulations to you on that. I see lots of engagement there.
Yeah, I decided as the sheriff, I wanted to go in a different direction. I wanted to ensure the public was aware of not only what was going on in the sheriff's office, but crime trends in the community. I want them to be aware. What my marching orders were is to share with the public the great things that the men and women of this office are doing every single day. Because I think in the past we've done not such a great job of showing the great work that's happening out there every single day. It's remarkable what our folks are doing, whether you're talking the jail, patrol, or our detectives that are solving cases. So I want to make the public aware of what's happening.
I completely agree with you on that, and I mean that's kind of what we're trying to do as a party with this YouTube channel and podcast, because there's a lot of people doing solid work here locally, and people consume news at the national level and they'll follow the biggest headlines, the biggest names, and those are important. I'm not minimizing those, but there's a lot of solid people here, and I think hopefully people see how important your county commissioners are, your sheriff is, your town councils and mayors are, as a result of local control and solid government. So I think the difference between you and I don't have a budget. I'm a volunteer, so I gotta Flintstone this thing.
Right? No, I get it. I get it. Yeah, and I'm a fiscal conservative, so I'm doing the same thing. Like I said, day one when I got in here, we restructured this organization for efficiency. So we are truly doing more with less.
Absolutely. Well, Ken, for the last part of the conversation here, unless there's something you want to hit on, I'd like to talk some about the school resource officer situation, just so I have a better understanding, because I don't think I have a complete one. But for anybody that's watching, what is a school resource officer?
School resource officer is a deputy sheriff that we have assigned exclusively to that individual school. So that's their job 40 hours a week. We handpick the school resource officers to ensure that, number one, that it's a good fit for the individual school and the type of work that they do. So oftentimes we'll have the school help in the selection process for the SROs. We want to ensure that we establish a great relationship, not only with the students at the school, but also the school administration. And that deputy sheriff's job is there to bond and to establish relationships, let the kids know that law enforcement, we're not scary, we're just people like they are, but we're there to serve and protect them. Yeah, and we do occasionally have criminal incidents within the school, and that SRO is responsible for those incidents, and they have to do that. But we're also there to protect those kids and ensure that they're safe while at school.
Okay, so of the 400 deputies that you have on the DCSO, probably a decent number of those. I forget how many schools we have in Douglas County, but it's not a small number. I mean, it's got to be 50 to 100, right? Of those deputies are then in schools.
We have 31 right now that are assigned to various schools. So the police department, so the schools that are within the municipalities, those municipalities are responsible for those schools. So it's not just the sheriff that protects the school. So that workload is divided with the municipalities as well. So we have 31 total, and that includes supervision as well. So the sergeant and corporal and the lieutenant that oversees those folks.
Okay, so when you're talking about municipalities, that would be like Castle Pine. I don't Parker and Castle Rock both have their own police departments, right? So they're
And,
you're saying those
and
cities and Lone Tree. Okay,
yeah.
um, and then Castle Pines, they fall under your jurisdiction.
They do. We have a contract with them.
Okay, okay, so either a police officer from Castle Rock, Parker, Lone Tree, or your office is at every school, or is it just high schools, middle schools, elementary schools? Is every school have
Uh,
a school resource officer?
we have an SRO in every high school, and then every middle school, and then we have deputies that are in the elementary schools as well. But we send them throughout the day. They go to different elementary schools throughout the day to check on those schools, check on those kids. So they'll spend a limited amount of time at each school, and we don't keep the same hours or what time that SRO is going to be there. We mix it up. So if anybody potentially wants to do something to that school, they're not going to know when the deputy sheriff is there. So we mix it up sufficiently.
So there, if I'm following you right, then there are times where some elementary schools are without a school resource officer.
Correct.
Okay. In your view, and it's just this is an opinion because you live and breathe, you know, providing protection for the whole county. In your view, is it a mistake to allow teachers their Second Amendment rights in schools? Apart from the politics, is that a problem?
I have always, including on the campaign trail, if we have teachers that are properly trained, um, that I support teachers carrying armed. Um, I got a lot of I got pushback on that from various people. Like, well, you can't expect teachers to take on additional responsibility, and this teacher may not want to use force. And I get that. This is not for everybody, right?
Right.
But we have teachers that some are former military, some are former law enforcement, some may have some advanced training. But if in the cases of teachers who have high level training, I have always thought that they should have the ability to carry armed in schools to protect our kids. Here's an example that I will often give somebody is, God forbid, when the STEM school shooting happened, I was at the sheriff's office. My daughter attended Castleview High School at the time the STEM school shooting happened. Well, what occurred is somebody came into the staff meeting I was at, and they said, we have an active shooter at one of the high schools. Well, as a parent of a high school age student, obviously I'm like, what school? What school? Because I'm thinking of my daughter.
Right.
In those moments where you think it might be your child, you don't care who's there to defend your child, right? Whether it's the SRO or it's a properly trained school staff member that's there to protect your kid. What you want is you want to know that your kid's going to come home safely that night. And
Absolutely.
so I can't describe to you the terror that I felt in those moments when I didn't know if it was my daughter or not. And we all know what happened, and it's very tragic. We've seen what's happened throughout the country, and I fully support armed staff in schools, provided that they have the proper training, provided that these individuals want to take on that responsibility, provided they have the training and policies in place, of course.
This is such an interesting topic to me. and I appreciate your willingness to talk about this because it's so important. I mean, guns aren't going anywhere. There's more guns in this country than there are people. Um, and the idea that a gun-free zone is going to somehow solve the problem has been proven for, well, since Columbine, 1999. That's just not, that's fantastical. So what are we going to do? And I think school resource officers are a step in the right direction, but let's say I think I wrote this open letter to you, Superintendent Kane, the school board, that basically advocated for allowing teachers their Second Amendment rights in school. No one's compelling anybody to do anything, like you said, and there would have to be rigorous certification process. If let's say, I don't think the school board's supportive of it. Why? I'm not sure. But let's say, imagine a situation where they were. Would you even have the resources to provide the kind of training and certification? I mean, I know you've got the police academy, but that's an established, cadence. What if all of a sudden Director Peterson said, you know what, this is the direction we want to go, and I have X number of interested staff and teachers? Would you be able to handle that kind of influx?
Not with my current budget. I would have to increase the budget. I would have to increase staff, and the school district would have to come up with policies in terms of what training is. Is there a selection process? Is what training is required? Is there a qualification process? I could provide that training, but I would need additional staff to do that. I'm fiscal conservative, so I don't have any extra staffing positions for what would be needed to train those folks. But with an increase in my budget and increase with staff, yes.
It's interesting too, because, and I haven't had a conversation yet with one of the school board members or even really touched on school related issues. Yeah, we've just had a couple of these conversations. But one of the things that Douglas County is missing from the schools is, teacher pay is not as competitive as some of our surrounding counties, even though our taxes are just as high or higher. And the reasons for that are complex and really go beyond the scope of our conversation. But it seems to me, if you're just talking about, you have a fixed number of resources, whether they're dollars or personnel, you can't have an infinite support, right? An SRO costs a lot of money, right? It's another FTE, pension, benefits, healthcare, everything. And from my perspective, there's a logistical challenge, right? It's one person. Some of these high school campuses are large, right? So if you're in the gym when an active shooter kicks off in a chemistry lab or vice versa, it might take several minutes to cross campus. Whereas if you allowed teachers or staff to carry, then it seems to me, well, you might have two people, you might have four people in the building that are carrying. And so it seems to me there's an opportunity for the school district to offer a stipend to people that are willing and interested to carry. Like, if they're not getting paid as competitively, I'd like to make the case, and I bet there'd be some support for this. We will pay you a stipend of X amount to offset the cost or the fact that you're taking on duties that go well outside your scope as a school teacher or staff member. I mean, what are your thoughts around that? That's a proposal that I have, but what's your reaction to that?
Well, I'm not minimizing the importance of law enforcement, nor am I minimizing what our deputy sheriffs would do if there was an incident. But the first thing that I think of is Columbine High School, Arapahoe High School, Stoneman Douglas High School. There was an SRO on campus when the shooting started, and we saw what the results are. And
Yep.
so, to your point, and I want kids, in an ideal world, I don't want kids to have to go to school and all the teachers have a visible gun. You should never know which teacher is ideally. And so, I think that makes sense. If we have an active shooter that starts on one end of a high school and we have a deputy sheriff at another, that's a problem. And one life is too much to lose. Kendrick Castillo, that was one life that should not have been lost. And so whatever we can do to help keep our kids safe, and I don't know. So if somebody's at the mall and they see a security guard in a uniform, might be a 21-year-old kid, and people are okay with that. But once you
Right.
start adding firearms to schools, people they don't the nexus is not there. They're like, well, that's not good, that's not right, but they're okay with it at the shopping mall. What a lot of people don't realize is we have a church security network that I am, as the sheriff, that I am part of, to help um, ensure that we have communication with our faith community in Douglas County, and they share information regarding security concerns. I
Yeah.
think most people would be surprised to know that many churches, because they can't afford to hire an off-duty law enforcement officer, many churches have their own church security networks where they have advanced training for their some of the people that attend church there. And so, as the sheriff, I welcome that. And we have actually a training plan later this summer with that faith-based network with our deputy sheriff. So if we have to respond to an active shooter situation at one of the churches, our deputies, and our deputies always assume that we don't know who the bad guy is on a particular call, but we're gonna do that in a practical exercise. And so I guess what I'm saying is law enforcement doesn't have an issue with this. We embrace the fact that we want our kids to be safe when we show up on scene. We know how to handle it, whether it's the good guy with the gun or it's the bad guy with the gun. Our deputies have high level training to address those issues and how they address any type of threat when they respond.
Yeah, it is interesting. Your point about the shopping center and police being armed there, the airports, financial institutions, even our the school board meetings themselves. You have a deputy. I don't know if it's a Castle Rock Police Department or if it's one of yours, but law enforcement's there. So the school board. I mean, I've made this point, but I'll say it again. The school board enjoys the benefit of having that protection there, and that's I just think that should be extended as far and as wide as possible. I just think that the SRO. I mean, you gave three examples where there was an SRO on site. There's a logistical factor, but there's also a question of courage, and you don't really know. I mean, who does? Maybe the police officer themselves don't really know how they'll respond when they're in that situation. Will they step into the moment, or will fear overcome them? And we've seen in Parkland and Texas two examples where an entire police department was paralyzed.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. The Uvalde situation, I don't get that one at all. I don't understand it. Our deputies are trained for active. This is what we call them now. We don't call them active shooter. We talk them active killer. To get the point across, for every second that you don't address that threat, people are dying, and you need to
Mm-hmm.
get in there and address it. So if the deputy sheriff is the first one on scene and your cover car is going to be a little ways out, you're going in. You're going in. And so we train that way to ensure that we don't have a situation that we've seen, such as in Uvalde. Our command staff, our watch commanders that are out there on the street overseeing the entire county, they all get the same level of training. Since I have been the sheriff, I require all of my command staff, including myself, I attend the same training that my line staff do. So it's not a situation where I'm executive staff that doesn't apply to me. I might be the first one who rolls up on scene, and
Good
I'm
for
the one
you.
that has to go. So we have to when again when seconds count, we got to get in there and we've got to neutralize the situation.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's I'm excited and proud to hear that you're there with them. That you're not in the ivory tower, but ready to act when called upon. And speaking to elements that you mentioned, when I attend church, I'm carrying as well, and I know that there are other parishioners that carry at our church, and I'm on the board of a public charter school here in Douglas County, and we allow teachers and staff who want to carry. And even as a board member, I don't know what teachers and staff are carrying, and I don't need to know. I don't. That's part of the deterrent. If everybody knew who had what and was trained, then it's you lose some of the deterrent effect. I mean, it should be a complete mystery.
Agreed. And last that I heard, there has never been an active killer situation at a school where they've had armed staff. The last stats that I'm aware of, and then we saw in Nashville, that killer intentionally targeted that school because they thought it was a weak target.
Yeah. Yeah. I forget the author now, but there was a guy who wrote a book called More Guns, Less Crime. But basically, the idea was the more trained people that had concealed carry, the less likely a violent person is going to take a chance. It's only in those, you think about the major metropolitan areas like Chicago has made a name for itself for being both anti-gun and look at the crime any weekend, but especially on the holiday weekends. We got 4th of July coming up here. You know it's going to be on the news Monday morning. You know it's going to be on the news. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Agreed. The more law-abiding citizens that we have, they're armed. Quite frankly, the safer that we all are. As the sheriff, I've had very few incidents. We have almost 40,000 concealed weapons permits out there from the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. And so I've only had one since I've been the sheriff over the last 6 months where we had them use their weapons permit inappropriately. We'll revoke permits also if the person's involved in a domestic violence situation or they have a mental health hold. But in terms of using that weapon in the course of a criminal act, I've only had one in the last 6 months out of 40,000. Pretty good numbers.
Wow. Well, Sheriff, it's been a pleasure talking to you about everything happening in your office. Congratulations on your election, the first 6 months. I'm glad you're in the role, and I'm excited to see the rest of your tenure play out. Any last comments you want to share with the audience?
No, I'm extremely blessed to be the sheriff. Things are going extremely well. We're going to continue down this path. There's a lot more great things to come out of the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. We were one of the best law enforcement agencies in the entire country. And it's just not me saying that. We have outside assessors that come in ensuring that we have the best policies and procedures in place. We have assessors come in to ensure that we're following those policies and procedures. Our inmates get the mental health and medical treatment that they need. Our patrol deputies have the equipment that they need. And so the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, if you live in Douglas County, you know you've got one of the best sheriff's offices in the entire country. And this county can be proud of that.
We are proud of that. Thank you, Sheriff. And thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's content, please like, share, subscribe. If you've got somebody that you'd like to see interviewed, please write that in the comment section. Thank you again for watching. And thank you, Sheriff Weekly, for your service. Take care.